On this episode of ResiWeek, Parasol joins HTSA with remote support. Should or can integrators collaborate or just compete? And B&W's Formation wireless audio system. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 168, Compete or Collaborate.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Draper.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by the one and only Jeremy Glowacki. He is the executive editor at Residential Tech Today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me once again. I always enjoy these chats.
Thank you so much for being here. And his twin today, that is Jason Griffin. He is the Partner Development Manager at One Vision Resources, as well as the co-host of the Home Tech podcast, who's had me on one and only once. I didn't after the first trip. How you doing, Jason?
Well, you gave me enough grief, so we have had you on, and you can no longer hold that over my head, Matt.
No, I've never got an invite back.
No, I'm doing great. Excited to be back. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. All right, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Parasol partners with HTSA members for 24/7 remote support. I'm assuming, Jeremy, I should have asked you this in the pre-show, but I'm assuming that this was announced at the HTSA summit that just happened last week. But if you don't know Parasol, it is a 24/7 remote support company that is got offices in Las Vegas and Richmond, VA. And they have obviously partnered with HTSA to offer their solutions to HTSA members. Jeremy, I do want to start with you on this one. When you look at this just continuing growing trend of companies like Parasol, companies like Jason's, who are offering remote support, and initially I would almost say that it was something that was it didn't catch on right away. The companies that understood the concept and saw the value in it were right in there. But as a whole, the industry's been a little slow to adopt. This is a big buying group that has a lot of influence who is jumping on this remote support bandwagon, if you will. What is it about remote support that groups like HTSA, that integrators that are progressive, see as such a huge benefit to their business?
Well, I think the story, one of the stories you covered from our publication last week, kind of said it very well, and it's that sort of Uber influence on our industry. And at first, when that contributor submitted that, I wasn't quite sure what he was going for, but then it was really about remote support. It's about access for the end user. It's, we're going to have outages in these systems that are installed, whether it's a power fluctuation, there's something, just a glitch in the network. And to be able to respond quickly to that, and if that's possible within an integration company with the existing staff, then so be it, that's great. But a lot of these companies, are small, 3-5 person operations. And if you want to have any life outside of that company and not have your phone buzzing all the time, it's great to be able to outsource those initial triage calls to a support company like One Vision and to Parasol. You have the ability in the equipment to do quick troubleshooting, whether it's a power cycle, reboot kind of scenario or whatever it is, to access that equipment and do it in an efficient way. These clients don't expect, they're not, these are high net worth people typically. They don't have the patience to wait 24, 48 hours to get their network back online. They need someone to solve it for them now. They're also not going to be the one that crawls underneath or behind, a rack to pull a plug and plug it back in. That's typically not the way they work. So I think that's why these are starting to crop up, get more traction as companies. I think that buying groups are now becoming sort of the leading thought idea generators for this industry. I think that we've got still a very good trade association in CEDIA, but in a lot of ways, these smaller groups of like-minded people in these buying groups are able to pivot a lot more quickly. And HTSA has been on the leading edge of a lot of things, whether it's lighting fixtures. Now they're doing a big push with sales training, getting back to the nuts and bolts of how to sell. And working in this category is just another example of I think the way that they're leading with their group right now.
Very good. Jason, what you guys do over at One Vision is fairly similar to what Parasol does in the support channel. What do integrators need to consider when they start looking at the benefits and some of the potential pitfalls of outsourcing remote support?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. Like you alluded to, the company I work with, One Vision and Parasol, are at their core out there trying to solve a very similar problem, namely that providing ongoing service and support for a growing base of legacy clients at a high quality level all the time is a very difficult problem. And as a former integrator, I'm intimately familiar with how challenging that can be to meet that balance between really taking great care of your clients and also, like Jeremy alluded to, making sure you have something that resembles a life outside of work, right? So, we definitely at One Vision believe that it is one of the biggest, most important challenges facing the integration community today. And I think ultimately integrators now have a couple of different options they can choose from. We're obviously coming at the problem from a unique angle, and Parasol is coming at it from their unique angle. And as any business thinks, we think our angle is the way to go. But honestly, I think that it's great to have more than one company out there solving this problem. Like I said, it is a big one. And I think that to your question, what should integrators consider when they're going after this? It's really, how do we take our entire client base? So it's not just about new clients moving forward, right? It's about all of these legacy clients, and you have to think about this in almost two different buckets. And it's one thing to start a new program and sell it to clients moving forward, but the challenge of making sure all of those hundreds or perhaps even thousands in some cases of legacy clients that you've done business with, how are you going to educate them about your new way of providing support and get them to play by the same rules as everyone else? So it's a big challenge. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work. But ultimately, there are solutions out there now, like One Vision and like Parasol, that you can partner up with companies to help you lead you through that. And again, I think it's one of the biggest challenges out there. So it's really important for integrators to be thinking about it. And if you are set up in such a way that you feel like you can scale and grow your company doing it in-house, that's great. But I know a lot of companies out there really could benefit from sort of having a supercharged approach by leveraging with outside partners, just like a lot of companies do for bookkeeping or service design or system design or any one of those other areas where this is very common.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from CE Pro and the one and only Julie Jacobson. I got to say, when I saw the title of this, I was confused. It took me a second to really latch on to what she was saying, which does not happen very often, but I was really impressed. On this opinion piece, JJ posters, what if local integrators collaborate instead of just compete? And she goes on to use the example of car rental companies, specifically at airports, where they will share staff, parking lots, rental facilities, signage, and often personnel to facilitate renting cars to travelers. But Julie offers the proposition of what if local integrators did that, and uses a couple of examples of her time in Minnesota, where a couple of industry folks got together and would talk openly about industry things, but also business things, down to those nitty gritty business secrets that you share with your friends, but most often you'd never think to share those with your competitors. Jason, I want to come back to you, being the former integrator in this case, and I have lots of questions about this and the functionality of this. but I really wanted to narrow it down to two sides, one which I'll ask you and one which I'll ask Jeremy. Do integrators, do they want to collaborate? Is that even on their radar?
Yeah, obviously we're painting with broad strokes here, and there's a million shades of gray to that question. I think generally speaking, I was with you, Matt. I had a similar experience when I read Julie's piece, and it took me a while to kind of get it. And at first, I have to say, you mentioned a former integrator, but not just a former integrator, a former VIA integrator, right? So I wasn't
going to bring that up.
So I've seen the very far end of this spectrum, and we all know how that ended. That's obviously an extreme example, but it is an example nonetheless. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I've also been a part of companies that actually have done this. Smaller companies where we had some friendly competitors in the market, and we had some technicians that maybe we couldn't keep busy for a couple of weeks, and they'd go over and help one of our competitors, and then they'd share back when we needed extra bandwidth. And if you have the right companies in your market that are friendly, being the key word, then certainly, like, these sort of things sort of dip your toe in the water and start to build that relationship and experiment. And I think some of these things are a great idea. So it really just becomes a question of, like, how far does it go? And I think as soon as you start to get into, some things are obvious, like sales is clearly going to be a very guarded thing within companies. Maybe not sales techniques generally, but actual opportunities and things of that nature, or operations. There are different areas of sensitivity, but when it comes down to sharing things like perhaps labor resources, and then getting together and forming more community and sharing perhaps best practices about how you're approaching the architects in your market or the builders in your market, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here for integrators to do more from what I've seen, to collaborate more. Again, it's just a question of how far you take it.
Very good. Jeremy, on the flip side of this, I asked Jason why, I asked him, if dealers want to, and I want to ask you, why would integrators want to collaborate? What is the intrinsic benefit there that should, in theory, outweigh the negative of, to kind of use Jason's terms, be really friendly with arguably a competitor?
Yeah, I'll echo what both of you had said about the way I read this. I was really kind of going, no, this is weird. And then it got to a point where I'm like, yeah, okay. But the reason why it got to that point, frankly, was where I think she got the nugget of the idea for the story originally, which is Chris Smith from Cloud9 in New York. And he's one of these guys that's just, he's just a really smart guy in the industry, and has ideas that maybe think outside the box a bit. And so he had written a blog post for a site that had, for interior designer resources and that sort of thing, about how they collaborate. And he had this meeting with something like, he'd cold called and also called, competitors that he knew in his market. And he met with them individually, not as a big collective like Julie was talking about, but basically got sort of their buy-in that we will look for each other, look for opportunities. And I think one of the examples he cited was commercial versus resi work. And so, you may have a mostly residential contractor or integrator who just doesn't have the skill set or the bandwidth to do the commercial job that their CEO client asked them to do. I mean, I'm thinking in his market where you're in Manhattan, you might get in seriously over your head if you're dealing with, a major commercial building, say high-rise situation. There's a lot more legwork that goes into those projects probably than your typical medium-sized city. And they may just say that that's just not in our wheelhouse, and we're not going to be able to get in and out of those projects. So, he's been able to leverage those relationships into some commercial work because they're very strong in that area from a traditionally residential integrator. Another example that I've heard is when, you might be more of a, let's say you're a Control 4 dealer, but you have a client that really wants a Crestron, system, or maybe it's even RTI to control 4, something like that, where there's something very specific in the use case where maybe it's a price point or feature set, and that your colleague in the market, you guys don't sell the exact same thing, but you could refer them over to them. Maybe it's just staffing from, we're backed up for 6 months on projects, and I know this guy has some openings, and it's better for the whole industry for sure. I just think that it's good to not say no in certain situations, to be able to say yes without putting yourself at a disadvantage by, getting in over your head with something.
Very good. The one little aside that I'd add to this is, this is one of those things that again, it caught me off guard when I first saw it, but when I actually started reading through it and thinking it through, this is something that I would argue we need within the industry a lot more than we probably think we do. Having that collaboration, having that, ability to raise the tide of our industry and help promote best practices and all those other things can do nothing but great things for our companies and the industry in general. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from CNET. It was kind of a late addition. Bowers and Wilkins, B&W, channels Sonos with their high-end Formation wireless system. If you haven't followed this, B&W has been, really not jumping into this whole wireless whole home audio platform. It hasn't been something that they've gone after. And today they announced this new Formation system. They have some, to use the writer's words, bizarre and beautiful shapes to their Formation speakers. And again, this is a range of prices from essentially $4,000 US down to $1,000, give or take, on a couple of their systems. This is a mesh network that was built off the EVA automation platform that bought B&W in 2016. Jeremy, I'm going to come back and start with you on this one. This is something that I can't say I'm surprised by. I will say that I'm a little shocked it took so long for them to get into this market. But I'm still a little confused. And, we were kind of joking at the top of the pre-show with that first line, because the first line of the article is Deep Pocket Audiophiles Rejoice. B&W claims its new high-end Formation wireless system is the new standard in whole home audio. Deep pockets. It's B&W. It's not going to be cheap. This is not going to be something that you're going to likely find at your local Radio Shack or Best Buy or anything like that. When you look at this system, when you look at this platform, is this arguably the perfect example of a customer who wants to buy into this system, into this platform, because of that B&W name?
Well, first of all, I've been hearing about their wireless initiatives for about 2 years. I've been to B&W's North American headquarters multiple times, not to brag, and they've been hinting that this EVA automation technology is going to be, incorporated at some point, and it finally just came to fruition. I don't know why it took so long, but it's been a traditional company with wired loudspeakers for a long time. I guess it's just it's a process, right? I don't know if audiophiles are going to ever rejoice about a wireless audio solution. I kind of think that might be, it's a cute lead, but it's not really the reality of the way these guys think. B&W is, at least in the Joe Atkinson era, was an exalted brand. It's guys who wire up massively ridiculous, speaker cable wires together to make these things sound what they think better than anything else. You really pay for high design. I mean, these look like no other speakers. Generally speaking, in the Bowers Wilkins heritage, it's been a style product as much as a audio product. And that's what you're getting here. You're paying a lot for high design. And I'm not sure that wireless speakers are bought for their design so much as their functionality, their simplicity, their ease of use. Just we're looking at solving a problem here more than a luxury goods that we're used to with audio. And I think they have to have a wireless option, but I don't know at this price point if they're going to get your general consumer to say, yeah, I want the more expensive wireless solution. And their current their current fan base, your customer base, probably wants to stick with the traditional thing. But who knows? Maybe there's a situation where they can't wire up the speakers and they want to have a wireless thing, and they're all in on BMW. So none of us have all the answers, but I do think it's a gamble making it a price point like that. Very
good. Jason, when you look at this, the thing that kind of caught my eye was not so much the design, not so much the price point or anything like that. Most, at least speaking from my experience as an integrator, most customers who want BMW will have no problem paying for it. And most people who want that design aesthetic of BMW, again, will have no problem paying for it. Is this, though, a situation where the speaker design, the speaker tech is only as good as the accompanying app that comes with it? Because let's be fair, the probably biggest asset that Sonos has is the fact that their app has been widely over and above every other competitor on the market.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker tech, that's debatable. We can have that conversation for days, but their app is fantastic and most people love their app. Is this something that will live and die by the quality of their app opposed to the quality of the speaker?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because when I do look at the product, I think instantly back to my recent history as an integrator in the high-end market of Los Angeles. And I can certainly see some homes where these speakers would fit in aesthetically, but then, and performance-wise, certainly BMW is a good performing speaker. Nobody's going to argue that. But ultimately, the question as integrators are always grappling with is, well, how nicely does it play with everything else that I've got in the system? And so presumably these sorts of the clients who are going to be buying these sorts of speakers are also going to be buying a whole bunch of other technology in their homes. And if these speakers are isolated to their own app, and that app is not stellar, maybe it's good, maybe it's okay, maybe it's terrible, but it's not like the best possible user experience, then yeah, absolutely. Like at the end of the day, the clients have to be able to quickly and easily access the music they want to play. And it sounds obvious, but it's true. It's a challenge, because these clients have comfort levels with technology that are all over the spectrum. So I do think that the control layer is a big question mark. And I see in the article here that they're going to have their own Formation app. It does say it's compatible with AirPlay 2 and then Roon, which is I know another popular sort of streaming solution in the high fidelity end of the market. What's not totally clear to me is how this will play, if at all, with other control systems. And so that'll be a big question mark, I think, in the systems that this gets integrated in. And ultimately, BMW is going to have some pull just by the brand recognition and the name. They're going to be able to sell some of these products for sure. But in order for the integration company at large, the integration workforce at large, to get behind these products, they've got to play nicely, at least to a certain extent, with other products. And so to me, that's probably the biggest question mark. And then just overall adoption at those price points, as you guys alluded to, will be interesting to see. No idea how BMW forecasts in terms of volume. They're obviously aiming for a lower volume, higher price point than, say, somebody like Google, who's selling, $35 Google Homes. So clearly it's a whole different ballgame. But it'll be interesting to see how this is adopted. And I think there will definitely be a small niche for it. Will they be able to make that small niche bigger? Only time will tell.
Very good. Is this something, and either one of you can answer this, is this something where we should be concerned that it took BMW 2 years to get an AirPlay 2 product to market? Because Jeremy, you mentioned you've been hearing about something about this product line for quite a while. What's the delay in why it takes so long for some of these companies to get something to market?
I can only think that it's, talking about a Silicon Valley type company combined with, a traditional audio, British, UK based audio company. It's just two different cultures. And it probably took some time to blend those two together. They've had some engineering turnover there at Bowers, and some guys have been there for a while, but there's been probably a cultural shift there that's had to take place, and it's not something that could just flip a switch.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Jeremy, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Residential Tech Today, where can they do that?
ResTechToday.com is our website, and I'd love for people to go there and subscribe to the magazine. We have a beautiful print edition that just came out with Penn Jillette on the cover, magician. It's not your typical industry trade. We've got a consumer feel, newsstand feel, and a lot of good insight on the tech stuff too inside.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. Jason, my friend, thanks again for joining us. If people want to connect with you, catch a episode of the Home Tech Podcast, or arguably, potentially, more importantly, stop by One Vision Resources, where can they do that? Yeah,
thanks, Matt. And again, appreciate you having me back on. OneVisionResources.com. OneVisionResources.com. That's the place to go check out what we're doing there. And then if you want to come check out my podcast, we'd love to have you. HomeTech.fm is the place to go for that. So thanks again, Matt.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.